one of our first properties, we were using a third-party broker. They lived, in the major metro that's an hour and a half away. We had a 2,000 square foot vacancy and just we're getting no activity on it. It made no sense to us. We're managing properties in small towns across 27 states right now. And so each individual property on itself is inefficient to have kind of third parties doing anything.
How often is an MRP employee maybe hitting every property on average? When you say we are negotiating a lease or we're helping them with the TI, is that MRP Capital Group or is that you and a third-party management company? How do you handle the operations on site?
Yeah, no, and when I say we, it's MRP. And so pretty much from the beginning of this strategy, we knew that we wanted to build the infrastructure internally. And primarily it's because, the old saying of no one's going to care as much as you're going to care. Also at the same time, it's the efficiencies of it. And so in the very beginning, we see this big picture of what scaling this asset class and consolidating a portfolio of this asset class, where those efficiencies can come from the relationships with tenants and, other third parties across the country to make things more efficient. But even from the beginning, it was like, take leasing, for example. We took that in-house really early. One of our first properties, we were using a third-party broker. They lived, in the major metro that's an hour and a half away. And this was one of the best Walmarts you could ever be next to. It was in Harrison, Arkansas. It's actually Walmart store number 2. And anyways, we had a 2,000 square foot vacancy and just we're getting no activity on it. It made no sense to us. So we eventually took that in-house, and then all of a sudden you're getting 5 sign calls a week. And it's just a perfect example of, not to say that I would think any differently if I was the broker, but to go and drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to go show a 1,500 square foot space to a tenant, you have no idea if they're going to do it or not, versus I have bigger listings locally. I get it, right? And that's kind of one of the reasons why we took it in-house is because, one, we care, and to us, a 1,500 square foot vacancy is just as important as a 10,000 square foot vacancy across our portfolio. And then again, the thought process long-term was we're going to have better relationships with the national credit tenants the bigger we get versus that same broker and maybe his company in that town. And then with the local or regional tenants, we have guys that are just boots on the ground, cold calling every day too. And so that's just an example of why we would take it in-house. But we do property management in-house, we do leasing in-house, we have finance and accounting. We do outsource, obviously, like taxes and, bigger accounting projects. We have legal in-house now, still using third-party legal in certain situations. But, as much of the core that we can control, we've built the company around doing that. And again, we only do our own properties and which are all Walmart shadow centers. So we don't do third party for anybody else. And this all goes into kind of this asset class is the foundation of, the next 30 plus years of what this company will do. And so really getting the operations and the systems right to make this as successful as possible is not only to make the execution today as good as it can be, but also as we continue to scale more and more and more efficient.
I saw another similarity there between what you guys do and what we do. So we're vertically integrated, just like you are. And we have all of our property management in-house, and we don't do third-party management for anyone else. And one of the reasons for that is I really feel like it's our competitive advantage, the way we operate. And we also don't want to be distracted by trying to run the operations for other people. So on your end, if we're talking, for us, apartment operations are a little more hands-on, I would say. So we're hitting every community, if not daily, multiple times a week. How often is an MRP employee maybe hitting every property on average?
On average in a year, it's at least 2 to 3 times. And that's a combination of leasing, going out there and doing, they'll go on 3-4 day kind of tours and go see 12 properties and, do door knocking, all that kind of stuff. property management alongside construction as well. And so if it's, going because there's a specific project or whatever there may be, like there's always a reason that somebody's going out there. And so at a minimum, that's kind of happening no matter what. And then anybody that goes out to one of our properties, even if I or my partner showed up one day because it's on the way to somewhere else we're traveling or we want to go there for some sort of reason, we have like a checklist of anybody that goes there, make sure you take pictures of this, that, and the other, and that sort of thing. And so everybody kind of, if somebody's there, we're getting the right information. But another part of something we can talk about more, though, is kind of the efficiencies that come with scale and how do you start optimizing that and the right technologies that allow you to even do this more effectively, because we still are unique. And again, you share in some of the similarities too but we're managing properties in small towns across 27 states right now. And so each individual property on itself is inefficient to have kind of third parties doing anything. And it was a lot harder when we were smaller. Today, it's a lot easier to start implementing either technologies or other kind of third parties. And so like we have National Roofer that goes and makes sure they do roof checks every year and they replace our roofs when they need to be replaced. We've leveraged third parties to even manage the consistency of hiring the day porters and the landscapers and all that kind of stuff, and just certain technologies. One that we implemented recently called ID plans or RPM, remote property management, is just a huge game changer for us because it's every single one of our properties now has this view of all the moving pieces. So like where every single HVAC is, exactly what brand it is, the serial number, when it was built, when it was manufactured, to the gas lines, all that kind of stuff. It's incredible. And so even if it's not our person physically going there, if we're having somebody else go there for some other reason or to do an inspection that we're not doing or something like that, the more efficient we get with that sort of thing makes even them more efficient. And it's a lot of really fun stuff to start implementing. But, it's always kind of a catch-22 because you want to be there as much as possible, but you also need to know how to be as efficient as possible and what you're really trying to accomplish at the end of the day. And for us, that's making sure that our core team is managing these properties and any third party or service that we're using as efficiently as possible. So even whoever's there is getting us the information that we need no matter what.
I love it. I made a note of RPM, Remote Property Manager, because that sounds super cool. I've never heard of it. I'm going to look that one up. Sometimes I feel like, people can get software fatigue if you implement too many different types of software in your organization.
For sure.
How do you guys make that decision, you and your partner, or is it you and your leadership team? How do you decide like, hey, we need this tool and it's worth the effort of implementing it?
It's a question that is always a topic of conversation, and we've made all the mistakes of implementing too much too fast, doing an implementation and not getting everybody fully on board. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, half the people are using it, half the people aren't. So some of the information isn't as trusted. And so I've learned to, as much as you need to be consistently looking at new ways of doing things and adding pieces of technology, at the same time, you got to find the right balance of making sure you're utilizing the core things as much as possible. The old saying of garbage in, garbage out, and making sure that that's, down to a T. And the more that we let our leadership team and even just anybody in the company have input and come together to kind of figure out what's really important. RPM is a great example of that, of several people for a long time kept pushing it and coming back with it and all of that kind of stuff. And, that got that through, and it was a huge one. At the same time, we've put in a bunch of stuff that we're now kind of layering back because it was too much, and trying to make a bunch of different widgets work together doesn't always work, right? And so it's kind of finding that healthy balance of not doing too many implementations, but making sure that we're also on the forefront of what is out there, and the time that we do focus on new technologies and systems is going to be worth it.